Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our fifth cycle of 1994, looking at a movie. In this episode, we're looking at the Flintstones, so a live-action adaptation of the Hanna-Barbera classic cartoon, released in 1994. Remember seeing this in the theater and not really loving it. I thought it was just kind of okay. I didn't get particularly good reviews. I think it made a decent amount of money though. And then I guess they did a prequel like some 6 years later called like Viva. Was it like Viva Rock Vegas? I never saw that, and that had a whole different cast. And I've heard that was actually even worse than this one, and also made even less money against whatever budget it had. But I remember when this came out, it was a big deal. I remember watching the Flintstones on like local TV, kind of like throughout like my childhood, like throughout the 80s and early 90s. Really enjoyed the Flintstones. Probably my favorite thing about the show though was the kind of modern like amenities, if you will, or like things like airplanes, and this is how they would have done airplanes in like the Flintstones times, or like how like a shower is just an elephant's trunk or a mammoth's trunk sticking through like a window and spraying water on somebody. I really like that, and I think that actually kind of translated to the movie fairly well. The movie though, it's just weird because like the whole premise of the cartoon usually is Fred has some kind of harebrained scheme that like Wilma ends up not liking. Because I think it was like based on the cartoon from what I remember reading about or seeing about is basically based on the honeymooners because they have was it like Ralph Cramden and his wife? I think it's like Alice, and then their neighbors. And basically, it's like Ralph Cramden essentially is Fred Flintstone. Alice is essentially Wilma, and then I forget Art Carney's character. That's basically like Barney and so on. So basically, an adaptation of that in cartoon form, where in the honeymooners, Ralph would get some kind of harebrained idea, and then Alice would eventually like find out about it. Um, and there was really only one thing in the movie where it felt like that. It's kind of in the beginning because like I think like Wilma's like, I went into our savings account and there's no money in the savings account now, and he's trying to kind of and it ends up not really being a thing that's all that bad. He donates like a bunch of money to Barney so they can like adopt a kid or something, or him and Betty can adopt. But we'll get to that when we get to the plot. I have some notes here about the movie, but I did rewatch it for this series, and I think I liked it a little bit more. The plot is convoluted; it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think the production design is really good. The acting, I think it's like kind of like the hallmark of the show is these characters and the way that they're portrayed in the film is a very good translation to the cartoon. I think the cast did a great job of embodying those characters. So that's at least a positive. And like I said, the production design is really good. All of like the sets are kind of like imaginative and kind of like how you would look at a set from like the show. Let me actually just pull my notes up here. So we had the Flintstones, released May 27th, 1994. Ended up grossing $342 million off of a $46 million budget. So that's pretty good. Let's see here. It started apparently being developed as far back as 1985, and I think Richard Donner was originally attached to kind of direct it. There were a bunch of scripts that were kind of like rejected. Apparently, one of those scripts was almost like a Flintstones version of Grapes of Wrath, where Fred and Barney were basically going from like trying to keep their families together, like going like around from like area to area. That ended up not really working out. Let me just pull this quote up here. There was a quote. Yeah, so it was Mitch Markowitz was hired to like be the writer, and this is kind of like talking about the Grapes of Wrath thing. So years later, he commented on it and says, "Quote: I don't even remember if it was actually sorry. Quote: I don't remember. I don't even remember it that well. But Fred and Barney leave their town during a terrible depression and go across the country, or whatever that damn prehistoric thing is, looking for jobs. They wind up in trailer parks trying to keep their families together. They exhibit moments of heroism and poignancy." So that ended up kind of being one of the kind of like rejected plots for it. So that was the quote from there. But then after that, the rights got like sold again, or somehow got transferred to Amblin Entertainment, which is Steven Spielberg's production company. And Spielberg was one of the ones, like a huge proponent of getting John Goodman on board to be in the movie. John Goodman's one of the best things in the movie. Like I think he does a very good job of portraying Fred Flintstone. Like Rick Moranis plays Barney. He does a very good job. Um, both I think it's Elizabeth Perkins and Rosie O'Donnell do really good jobs portraying both Wilma and Betty. Like I said earlier, like the acting and the way they like the actors definitely understood what they were like doing, and like I think it's the only thing that really makes it not work for me is just the overall plot, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Steven Spielberg really wanted to get John Goodman on board. Other actors that were initially considered for Fred were John Candy, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray. And I think both Chevy Chase and Bill Murray apparently were just like kind of disqualified because they didn't like have like the kind of the look that they were looking for with Fred. I think John Candy could have fit. Dan Aykroyd maybe to a lesser extent, but I think John Goodman is like the perfect casting for that. But John Goodman also apparently wasn't really looking forward to being in the movie. He also didn't want to be in the follow-up film, which is technically a prequel, but he didn't want to play that character again. I think it was like a typecasting thing, because I think like after this, like he's done a lot of like really good movies where like stuff like The Big Lebowski. He's in, I think is it Flight, the Denzel Washington movie. He's just an incredible actor. He's in what is it, like 10 Cloverfield Lane. So you can definitely see why he wouldn't want to be typecast. Like I said, the movie didn't review very well, but it definitely made it was successful as far as like it being a commercial success. We're now going to get into the plot of the film. If I could remember, it's like I said, it's kind of a convoluted plot. So like it basically just starts out like a day at the quarry. You have like kind of like somewhat like the classic kind of cartoon introduction. And I was thinking, I was probably overthinking this, but like I was like, you see Fred and Barney driving. You know, like they're driving in Fred's car. They're driving home after work, and Fred is steering. I'm like, how does his car even steer if it's just a roller that only goes that way? You don't actually see it steering. Whatever. Anyway, so it's revealed that Fred has given Barney a decent amount of money so him and Betty can adopt a child from the adoption agency. Like apparently, like they maybe need to see that that person has like employment, even though Barney is employed at the quarry. But they probably just need to say like, hey, like donate some money so you can adopt this kid. He gets home, Wilma's there, and Wilma's like, hey, the garbage disposal is acting up, and this is one of the kind of like cool modern things that we have here, but they didn't obviously have back then. So basically, Fred opens this little cabinet underneath the sink, and it's like a boar, like a pig kind of thing, just sitting underneath, and basically when stuff gets thrown down, it basically just eats it. So he reaches into its mouth and pulls out like I think he pulls out like a fork. But then she realizes, what was like, when I went into our savings account to get money out to buy a new disposal, we didn't have any money. And she's like, hey, Fred, where's this money? And he eventually comes clean and says, hey, I gave the money to Barney and Betty so they can adopt the kid. And Wilma finds that to be really cute. So part of the subplot is that they are, like a little bit is that Betty and Barney are adopting a kid. They go to the adoption agency. They get Bamm-Bamm. Bamm-Bamm kind of is like, there's a montage of him just kind of like running wild, doing the obviously Bamm-Bamm things. And then it's revealed that I think it's Kyle MacLachlan's character and Halle Berry's character are conspiring essentially to embezzle a bunch of money from Slate's company. They both work at Slate as like Halle Berry's character is called Sharon Stone. Obviously, like a lot of rock and stone puns in this movie. But apparently, from what I was reading, Sharon Stone was initially actually supposed to be in the movie, probably playing essentially a prehistoric version of herself, Sharon Stone. But Sharon Stone, the actress, I think has some scheduling conflicts come up. I don't know what she would have been filming around this time. I guess maybe Sliver. So I don't know what scheduling conflicts there were. But she couldn't be in the movie, but the character was still named Sharon Stone, even though it was played by Halle Berry. Which I think actually works out better, because you obviously know it's not Sharon Stone, but Sharon Stone being a rock, like I said, a whole bunch of rock puns. But her and Kyle MacLachlan are conspiring to essentially just, like I said, embezzle a bunch of money and like flee the country essentially and go to Rockapulco or whatever it is. So what they do is they have an aptitude test to find the candidate for this basically kind of like fake executive position that they're going to um, put somebody in. So basically to take the fall for all the embezzling. And so what they do is they have these tests and they have chisels. One joke I kind of liked was like make sure your chisel, you have a number two chisel, obviously like a number two pencil. And Barney and Fred and a bunch of other people are taking this test. Prior to this, there's a bowling game where basically Barney is like, like I'm like eternally grateful for Fred, and I'll try to make it up to him, what have you. So his idea of making it up to Fred is he sees Fred is struggling with this test, so he takes basically the tests are just like I don't think there's any names on the test. It's just the answers, and you put them into an envelope with your name on them. So he's obviously got his in his envelope. He's got Fred's in Fred's envelope, and he switches the envelopes. So he puts his test in Fred's envelope. He puts Fred's, like I said, puts his test in Fred's, and Fred's in his. Kyle MacLachlan's character and Halle Berry's character look over the test, and they pick Fred to be their new executive. The thing that doesn't really work for me is like there's a part of the plot where Kyle MacLachlan's character is like we need somebody dumb enough to like do this and not really question anything, so we can pin the blame on them later. And it's revealed that Barney I think actually scored the highest on the test, but it made it look like Fred scored highest because they switched the tests. But some of the stuff that they have Fred doing, like doing these like requisition forms and things like that, you would think if Barney scored the highest, he would notice like the weird kind of like cooking the books kind of thing that was going on. I don't really know. But anyway, so Fred gets promoted to this position. He gets his own office. He gets a secretary, which is Sharon Stone. And then Barney just goes back to working in the quarry. His first real task is Kyle MacLachlan's character says, "Hey, you got to fire Barney. He scored the worst on the test. You got to fire him." And he really can't do it. So like they're at a party, I think, to like celebrate Fred getting this promotion. And he eventually tells Barney that he's fired because he got the lowest score on the test. And then obviously with Barney being fired, the rebels are now under kind of like a financial hardship, so they have to basically they move in with the Flintstones and they're kind of like living together to kind of just like help because now Barney obviously like can't afford like he has no job anymore. So it's just weird because like I said, it's like the plot is kind of convoluted in the regard that they put the dumbest person in charge, but Kyle MacLachlan says we kind of need somebody dumb enough to go along with this. So like I said, had Barney actually got that position, I think he would have noticed a lot of the weird like accounting that was going on to have those characters like embezzle like a bunch of money. So that's weird. Elizabeth Taylor's also in this movie. Apparently, this is actually her final theatrical role. I think she did a bunch of other maybe TV stuff. I know she had a bunch of health issues and stuff like that. But she plays Wilma's mother-in-law, who constantly is just obviously totally disapproves of Fred. After that, like Fred is now still working at in the office. He's getting a bunch of requisition forms, like signing them, and like, I think they're like counterfeit forms or something. I don't remember exactly. Barney now has to do a bunch of other like work to make ends meet. He's like a test, basically like a crash test dummy for some cars and things like that. And then eventually Fred's success kind of goes to his head, and it causes a huge rift between him and Barney. It causes a rift between Wilma and Betty. There's a part where like they're at like a very fancy dinner, and it's Fred, it's Wilma, and it's Betty, and Barney isn't there yet. But then it's revealed that Barney is actually working at that restaurant, and I think this is kind of where he admits to switching the test with Fred. And then there's a classic line where he's like, he gets into a huge fight, and him and Betty are leaving, and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, I forgot to punch out." Like, obviously punch out at work, but he turns around and then just punches Fred, knocks him out. More of the kind of and then they eventually move, like the rebels eventually like move out, and they're kind of just like living like kind of like in the middle of nowhere. I think they're trying to cook some eggs at one part, and eggs in one part, and the dinosaur's upset, and it basically like Betty was about to like cook this dinosaur's eggs. It was like a brontosaurus that was like not too pleased. Um, Eventually, and one thing Fred is pushing for is for the people in the quarry to get like 2 weeks paid vacation. And Kyle McLaughlin's like, "Hey, I got this contract for you to sign. This will get you. This will get them that vacation." And he's got this thing that like a key part of the movie is the Dictabird. It's like basically like a thing that records all the conversations in the office, and it's just literally this bird that just sits on a desk. But so Fred eventually like fills out the forms. The bird is like, you should probably like read what you're signing before you sign this stuff. So Fred signs the stuff away, which basically gets the entire quarry staff fired. So now all the quarry staff is like upset with Flintstone for getting him fired. Um, then basically like it's revealed that like Kyle MacLachlan like is getting ready to leave for Acapulco, and Halle Berry or Sharon Stone is looking through like the bag. She's like, "Hey, why is there only one ticket to Acapulco in here?" He's like, "Oh, like well, like obviously he doesn't want her there because she's like a totally like he's trying to tie up all the loose ends." But she's like, "Hey, once I get to Acapulco and I figure it's safe, I'll send for you." And then so Sharon Stone has kind of like a change of heart and eventually ends up helping in the end. I think she still gets arrested or whatever. But at this point, there's a huge mob going after Fred. I think Betty at one point, or not Betty, Wilma at one point moves out and like is going to live with her mother. And Fred is basically wanted by I think the police at this time because I think Kyle MacLachlan's character is like said, "Hey, this guy's the guy that did a bunch of embezzling." So you see Fred walking around with like a fake beard, and he's talking to a bunch of people, the people from the quarry that don't right away know it's Fred. They're like, "Oh, if we," it's one guy's like, "Hey, if we ever like get that guy, we're gonna beat him up." And then the beer starts slipping, and then the at one point they do get a new garbage disposal. It's basically the exact same pig. Obviously, it looks a little like nicer because it's brand new. But that pig is also in the area where it's basically all the people that are like unemployed are hanging out, and the pig is like Flintstone, Flintstone, and points at him or whatever, however he says it, and then basically an angry mob comes after him, and they're about to like hang him up. I think like even Barney is now a snow cone salesman, and they're going to hang him up as well. But then Betty and Wilma break into the office. They get the Dick the Bird, and they basically clear Fred of any kind of wrongdoing. But when they go back to their house after the police and the kind of mob have kind of like let them go, they realize that Bamm-Bamm and Pebbles are gone. So they go to the quarry, and Kyle MacLachlan's character's got them, Bamm-Bamm and Pebbles, tied up to it's basically like a rock cutting machine. It cuts rocks into like what is basically like modular housing, I think. So it's like not sure if it's steam powered or whatever it is, but it's like a conveyor and it's got a big rock on it, and then you got like these axes that come down and chop it up. So they're on there. So that's basically like, hey, you could either he's like, give me the Dick the Bird and I'll give you the kids back. Then he turns the machine on anyway. So Fred and Barney had to team up to destroy the machine before it like basically like crushes Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm. And then Sharon Stone turns on Kyle MacLachlan's character. She knocks him out with like a club. And then a bunch of water and dirt kind of combined as the machine is being destroyed, and it's like this like big puddle of it's essentially what becomes concrete at the end of the movie. So Kyle MacLachlan's character gets covered in this stuff, and Mr. Slade at the end is like, "Hey, like, what is this stuff? What happened to like whatever is like Vander something, Vander Rock or something? I don't remember his name." But he's like, "Oh, I don't know." Like he's like, the machine was going crazy, and like the water mixed with the dirt and did this. And Mr. Slade is like, "This is a great invention. I'm gonna name it after my daughter. His daughter is Concretia." So he names the new stuff Concrete, which is basically what it sounds like. And he is offering to put Fred in charge of the concrete division of the Slate Company. And Fred is just like, "No, like I'm good. I just want to go back to like working in the quarry." And then he eventually does get the paid vacation for the quarry workers, and he basically just goes back to doing what he did before. And then the end of the movie kind of parallels the credits of the beginning of the show, or maybe the end. I don't remember exactly, but it's like they go to the drive-in movies. The drive-in movies are just at the beginning, but at the end they have the thing where they put the gigantic thing of like Bronto ribs on the car and it tips it over, and the cat comes through the window and all that kind of stuff. Um, like I said, I didn't love it the first time I saw it, but on my second watch through, this is only the second time I've seen it. I think I ended up watching it on Netflix. I had more fun with it. It's not that long of a movie; it's like an hour and a half. But I went in, kind of ignored like the plot was like you can go and ignore the plot, stay for the acting because I think the acting is really good. All the actors and actresses do a really good job of portraying the character from the cartoon, and I think it's probably the best casting for that you probably could have gotten for this movie. And then the production design, like all the sets and like the cars and the kind of stuff like that. The B-52s are in this movie. They do like a classic cover of the Flintstones theme. It's kind of weird, but it totally like fits the vibe of the movie. Um, but like I said, the production design is really good and the acting is really good. The plot doesn't really work. But overall, this most recent rewatch, I had fun with it. So, um, like I said, it's hit or miss. If plot matters to you, obviously the plot is kind of all over the place. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think like I said, the production design and the acting and the casting was really good. So that is going to do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few days with a video or computer game from 1994. Don't know what that's going to be just yet. We'll be back in a few days with that. So until then, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.